For the most part, the Paladin spec talents are something other than a hot mess, at least for this point in the alpha's development. There's room for improvement in the spec trees, there's tweaks that should be made, and indeed must be made if Blizzard wants Dragonflight to get Paladin players excited to play WoW again, especially for the Holy Tree. But the class talents? If I could make Blizzard do whatever I wanted them to do, I would tell them to throw this class tree out and start again from scratch. It is that bad, it really is. Where do I begin? Now, my first thought was, let's start at the beginning, at the top of the talents, but really, there's a problem with the tree overall, and I'd like to start by addressing that. I mean, it feels like there's two kind of class talent trees floating around in the alpha these days. There's trees like the Death Knight and Druid trees, where each spec has their own column, their own path, and you gain the ability to mix and match spells. The building blocks of the class are at your command. Placements make sense. There's great potential for fun, identity, and player freedom. And then there's talent trees like the Hunter, Shaman, and Paladin trees, where there are specs with no clear path, a bunch of talents that are jumbled together with half a semblance of rhyme or reason if you're lucky, and little to no rhyme or reason if you aren't, and rarely if ever can any one spec reach into another spec's kit and pick out interesting and fun spells to add to their own spell bars. It gives you the impression that one set of these was created by veterans of the WoW team with lots of experience through Warlords, Battle for Azeroth, and Shadowlands, while the others were put together by fresh-faced, unpaid or underpaid interns. Now, can you guess which devs made which trees? Yeah, the interns putting together the clear spec path trees are the ones I would see promoted if it was up to me. And I really wish they had worked on the Paladin class talents. I mean, Protection has no path. There's a kind of a holy path on the left-hand side that has a few tanky things mixed in here and there are a few talents in that path that I would like. Judgment of Light is cool, Golden Path is the kind of thing I'd want if Holy Radiance weren't unpruned, which I really wish it were instead. And then there's a kind of a Retribution path on the right-hand side, and well, Seal of the Crusader making a comeback sure is interesting. I'd love to use that while soloing for sure. But the middle? The middle is all about cooldowns. And none of them are very protection specific. I can kind of understand why they've done what they've done. The cooldowns that are down the middle are the kinds of cooldowns that any paladin might want. Avenging Wrath, Seraphim, Blessing of Protection, and I was about to say Divine Steed, but that's not actually that desirable. I'll get to that later on in this video. It kind of feels like Blizzard painted themselves into a corner by having so many cooldowns be common to the class. As a player, my go-to solution would be to make those cooldowns baseline, so that A, I don't feel like I'm suddenly losing those cooldowns at the end of Shadowlands by suddenly needing to spend talent points to get them back, B, there's room for protection stuff to be placed into the class tree, and C, we don't run into dilemmas about just where in the class tree we're supposed to put these everybody wants them cooldowns. Of course, Blizzard's design philosophy with these talent trees seems to be to avoid baselining things as much as they can get away with avoiding baselining them, while players' design philosophy is to baseline everything they can get away with baselining. It's sad when Blizzard and players aren't on the same page. Both parties look at the other's philosophy and think to themselves, ooh, if only I could convert the heathens, if only I could make them see why I want to do the things my way, they would change their whole attitude and way of doing things, and everyone would be off of their page, off of the wrong page, and everybody would be on my page, my right page, and everything would be hunky-dory and sunshine and butterflies and daffodils and fun! But really, that's not true at all. Blizzard did explain their design philosophies pretty well, and that didn't really change players' minds much. I don't want to poo-poo that because more open and honest communication from Blizzard about why they do the things they do is important, and we want more of that. But unfortunately, trying to change players' minds about stuff is probably the wrong thing for them to do. And I strongly suspect Blizzard knows full well that us players would like to see more things baselined, and that they know full well why we'd like to see more things baselined. But that knowledge didn't make them change their minds and do the right thing, did it? Another thing they really should have baselined was the auras. Auras are right up the alley of the things they said they'd wanted to baseline. Again, it's good that they communicated these things. Nevertheless, here these auras are in the class tree. Auras might look interesting to the developers, but they just aren't interesting to players. Yet here they are, rock walls of boring, standing in the way, requiring us players to tunnel through them to get to anything we'd find exciting deeper in the tree. No matter how flavorful these auras are, they really belong with the baseline abilities. And then there's what's immediately under those auras. Tier 3 is the epitome of the problems in this class tree. It really is. I mean, the first healing/tanking section on the left has Repentance or Blinding Light as its prerequisite. Seriously? Just what is healy or tanky about those? I suppose crowd control is useful for tanks, but for healers? Really? And Blizzard makes the same mistake over on the other side. The first Retribution section has Fist of Justice as a prerequisite. Just what is retribution-y about having a shorter cooldown on Hammer of Justice? Why should it be necessary for things like Rebuke or Turn Evil, or Seal of Reprisal and Seal of Alacrity for that matter? Things like cooldowns and crowd control belong in well-connected, easy-to-get-to places in between the Holy Retribution and Protection talent columns. That's the right way to design this. As it is, these CC tools are practically must-haves, whether you like it or not. An undesirable must-have prerequisite should be one of the biggest design no-nos with this new talent system. And then there's Divine Steed. It's a mobility tool that's in almost every way inferior to the thing that it replaced, Speed of Light. It's got a shorter duration, a problem which was only solved with conduits in Shadowlands, and those conduits are going bye-bye in Dragonflight. It used to have a longer cooldown, though that's no longer a problem with this version of it. But there are still irritating edge cases where being physically larger due to being on your mount prevents you from going through tight spaces, and some races have this issue while others don't. About the only thing that Divine Steed has on the old Speed of Light talent from Warlords is that Divine Steed is baseline and Speed of Light wasn't. And obviously it's not baseline anymore in Dragonflight. The fact that it's a bit faster than Speed of Light frankly doesn't matter in light of its shorter duration. You know, there are some moments where Blizzard pours resources into perceived problems that, from players' perspectives, don't exist. Keeping conduit energy around, nerfing Soar for evokers. Blizzard makes anti-fun decisions, struggles against player feedback instead of doing the smart thing, the fun thing, the right thing, and going along with player feedback instead of against it, and they waste their time and resources solving something that was never a problem in the first place, in the process creating a problem that they incorrectly call a solution. And every time they do, the game suffers for it. Then there are times like this where a problem's real, players perceive it, and Blizzard doesn't spend the itty-bitty quantities of time or resources necessary to fix the issue. And again, the game suffers for it. Speed of Light is more fun, more Paladinish, and better than Divine Steed in every way that counts. And if Blizzard wants players excited for Dragonflight, if they want to send the message, we listen and you can trust us, if they want to earn back player trust, then the right thing to do is to get rid of Divine Steed and bring back Speed of Light. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that Avenging Wrath is smack dab in the middle. It's a spell that just about every paladin would want. And there's paths out of Avenging Wrath that can take you into deeper sections for healing, cooldowns, and damage. Of course, it feels very strange to me that some sections have Avenging Wrath as a prerequisite, and some have Repentance/Blinding Light and Fist of Justice as prerequisites. It's nonsensical designs like this that make me think Blizzard should throw the whole thing out and start over. The deepest parts of the tree look more or less okay, insofar as Blessing of Dusk and Dawn, Seraphim, Sanctified Wrath, and Mad Paragon are interesting capstones. What I did with my ideal Paladin talents was to make Light's Hammer the Holy Capstone, a Mists of Pandaria-style Execution Sentence the Retribution Capstone, and an Unpruned Holy Wrath the Protection Capstone. The thinking with those was that damage buttons are more interesting than passives, though when those passives are legendaries, my tune changes a bit on that. All in all, this class tree is a hot mess that doesn't come close to living up to the potential of the new talent system and isn't fun to have to go through and is the polar opposite of exciting, the polar opposite of trust building. They need to start over. And here's what I, for one, want to see in the final product. The auras, they should go. Baseline those pooches. They're what the baseline ability pool was made for. The trichotomy of healing, cooldowns, and damage needs to be changed to healing, damage, and tanking. And the cooldowns, crowd control abilities, and interrupt should be slotted into places in between those three columns in very well-connected nodes where they'll make the most sense, be the most accessible to the players who want them, and provide the most player freedom in selecting which class talents they want. And when they can't be thusly slotted in, they should be baselined. That is how you make a good talent tree, and if Dragonflight is to be the expansion that wins back the crowd, earns back player trusts, and gets players excited to play WoW again, then they need to make a good talent tree. If it were up to me, Protection's column would begin with Hammer of the Righteous. Make that available to soloing Holy Paladins like me and to Retribution Paladins who want a multi-target alternative to Crusader Strike, and balance it with Crusader Strike somehow, maybe making them share a cooldown or something. The open question is, where to put the Protection column? Should it be between Holy and Retribution? Should Retribution be between Holy and Protection? Or heck, should Holy be between Retribution and Protection? Well, personally, I think Protection and Retribution should be next to each other since Rebuke belongs in between those two. I can see the benefits of putting Holy and Protection next to each other since that allows cooldowns like Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Spell Warding, and Blessing of Sacrifice to be in between them. The benefits of juxtaposing Holy and Retribution are place to put Denounce? Place to put Avenging Wrath? Well, no. Avenging Wrath is used by all three specs, so no. At the rate we're going, Avenging Wrath might need to be a root talent for all three specs, kind of like how the Mage Shield is the root in the Mage class tree, and then from there we get into the actual roots like Lay on Hands, Hammer of the Righteous, and Hammer of Wrath. That's if you insist on having Avenging Wrath in the tree at all, as opposed to baselining it, which is the simplest solution and would make players feel happy. And seriously, why isn't Blizzard doing that more often? Just because the talent system is new and exciting doesn't mean it's where everything should go, nor does it mean it's the best solution for every ability that's exciting, useful, or important. Anyhow, another thing I'd like to see is adding Templar's Verdict to Retribution's column. Really shallow, like you pick Retribution as your spec at level 10 and you automatically get both Hammer of Wrath and Templar's Verdict out of the class tree. Thing of it is, as a soloing Holy Paladin, Shield of the Righteous is disappointing as a Holy Power finisher. They were smart enough to keep it off the global cooldown. Since it deals so little damage, it would be a waste of a global cooldown unless I literally had no other buttons to press, which is something that happens from time to time, which makes me miss Denounce a lot, but the point is, it would make the gameplay more fun if I could use the new talent system to just reach over and get my hands on a nice, satisfying-to-cast finisher from another spec's kit, which is the exact kind of fun, exciting thing that this new talent system was designed to allow players to do in the first place. Sure, I wouldn't use Templar's Verdict for anything but soloing, and the Mythic Plus crowd might make good use of it to kill enemies much faster, and the Holy Paladin damage kit might need to be rethought to some degree to make Templar's Verdict balanced to use, but I think it's worth it. These are the ways the Paladin class talent tree could be useful to players, fun to traverse, versatile for constructing playstyles, and in general, good, and the opposite of the hot mess that this first iteration is. I sure hope Blizzard isn't closed to the idea of a large-scale redo of a talent tree at this point in Dragonflight's development, because if they don't redo it, then they're going to be delivering another unfair, unfun, unexciting dumpster fire to Paladin players when Dragonflight comes out. By their actions, sending us the signal, we don't listen and you can't trust us. Now they can turn this around. They should. Whether they will, whether they are listening, is what we're going to find out. They love to hide their cards over there in Irvine, California, but this is one card that will be on the table as soon as Dragonflight comes out. by their deeds shall we know them. We will know whether they're listening or not. Oh, and they got unprune Denounce too, whether it's baseline or in the holy talent tree or the class talents or whatever. Denounce. Don't forget that one.